Welcome, everyone. This is Heather Carlisle, and as always, know yourself, treasure life, and love others. This is 7 of 7 on the 7 layers of learning that each one of us wants to develop in ourselves and in the young ones that we care for. So I put this on my website, the first broadcast, that human life is relatable to these 7 fundamental truths. The love or respect for life, harmlessness, etc. Love or respect for relationships, love or respect for purpose, love or respect for caring, for power, for knowledge, and tonight it's for integrity. Freedom, growth, advancement, strength in ordeals, creativity, spirituality, questing. And I put on my invitation this evening that it's how we betray our integrity in 2 forms. So this is the 7th, and most of you are familiar with this by now, my building blocks of a healthy life, and the 7th notice is the one at the top. It's character, virtue, integrity. This is about our honesty, our sincerity, our virtue. And so this is trustworthiness, integrity, humor, faith, standards, philosophical thought, values, reverence. So that's what we want to develop in our kids and in ourselves. Of course, none of us is perfect. We do the best that we can. Then the second column, as you see and you know by now, is your expression of that. And that's your purpose and self-mastery. Third is mission, how we implement it to serve humanity. And so I'm going to talk about this area of being human and how, as humanity influences us, we get what we need and then we also don't get what we need, and how we respond to that. And it starts when we're kids, of course. So our purpose to master our character and honesty and integrity is our wisdom, knowledge plus empathy. So I think about it as head plus heart is our virtue, because our heart says, I care about something, and my head says, I'm going to be intelligent and thoughtful about it. And so put those 2 together, we get wisdom. Also a sense of humor. Sense of humor comes from delight. And that to me is a truly spiritual quality. And playfulness, mischief, wanting to just be tickled with each other, have some sparkle in our eye. So a philosophy of life or a religious belief, being grateful, neighborly, courteous, refinements of character. And then we implement that. Sometimes we do it in a really behind-the-scenes way. Sometimes it's part of our work. So community service, and sometimes our work is community service. Most times it is in some form. But we can add on to that other ways if you're a Girl Scout leader or if you support a nonprofit. Giving back, volunteering, citizenship, contributing your time, your talent, and your money to a cause, to a religion or a nonprofit, the environment, our planet, our streets, our world. So talking about our integrity, that's my best introduction in a quick way to that element, that last flowering of our systems. So what if we don't get what we need in order to develop that honor and integrity and virtuousness? So notice this is now one of those this way and this way. I call it a lifetime dilemma. So if we look at the dilemmas, and you may remember me showing this to you before, that the healthy thing is in the middle, and then we go one way or the other, away from what's healthy. And here you go. These are the two ways that we betray ourselves and betray our kids. So one way is very familiar. This, the way on the left here, which is the corrupt cheater, the unethical betrayer. And if we remind ourselves that the other side, the righteous betrayer, the person who becomes the judging saint, is just as much a betrayer as the corrupt cheater. So one of the things that I like to be known for is to ask people to trust. Trust yourself, trust your life, trust your instincts, trust what you know is right and good, and then use your wisdom. So this is my picture of how we disrupt the 7 basic needs that our kids have, the roots of our disempowerment. So of course, we were all disempowered in some way or another. And our parents weren't perfect, and goodness knows the times that they were born into were difficult in a different way from how our times are difficult. So this top level is what we're looking at tonight. So a child needs to be respected and not betrayed. So a child needs to be treated with honesty, honor, accountability, reverence. We treasure our little ones. Treat them with virtuousness, with patience, kindness, responsibility, forbearance. Treat them with integrity and morality. That's how we learn, is how we were treated. But if a child, if you're in your human foibles of some way or another, and you give your word and then you break your word, or you say you're going to do something and you never show up, or you ask them to be polite and kind and you end up yelling. So we're only human. It's, of course, along the dilemma. How much do we make a mistake, and how much does it hurt our kids? And so now look at here. We've got, again, that dilemma of one way and then the other way. So on one side is the betrayal, is the cheated child, where we've manipulated or been manipulative, cheated, lied. They've been lied to, they've been coerced, they've experienced revenge, promises broken, maybe dishonesty and lies, blamed, maybe their parent was in prison or is in prison. So that is the child experiencing betrayal by being cheated. Then that's the hurt, neglected child. Now over on the other side is also unhealthy, the overprotected child. So the worshipped child, where some people, it appears as if they put their children above God even. And so then the child is above the parents, is above the family, put on a pedestal. Their perfection is ensured. They are thought of as the little angel. Maybe they are treated with religiosity. Maybe they are judged. Or maybe they're taught to judge others. Maybe an authoritarian was controlling them and protecting them and not allowing them to find their own autonomy. Maybe they were bribed to do the right thing, to be the perfect child. So I hope that makes sense to you. And if you have any questions about that, please chime in. I love it when you ask me questions or have comments. So this is partly informed by, as you see in the title of the model, the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences that were in a very large study that we now depend on. And so this is my model for childhood deprivation. And notice the deprivation, and here again, I said you might be a little surprised, that the betrayal is not only the dishonest betrayal, where there are lies and cheating, But the other side of the betrayal is making the child more important, where they don't have their sense of humility and loving kindness. They've been put above, and so then they put themselves above. And therefore we betray their honesty and integrity in that way too. So let's look at what happens when we grow up. Then if whatever it was that we learned and how we were, the unhealthy role over here, the unethical betrayer, and then on the other side, the righteous betrayer. So in the middle, the healthy, the self-mastery of this particular dilemma, the honest soul, character. We treat people with honesty, we're accountable, reverent, philosophical, we have integrity, morality, we're honorable, virtuous, we have a sense of purpose and mission and maybe even calling in life. But when we were betrayed as a child, we're probably going to be carrying that with us into adulthood, where we become an unethical betrayer. And sometimes this is just being conflict avoidant and telling lies. And that's unethical, that's a cheater. And then we weren't taught to be honest and upfront and to know how to handle hardships or difficulties. So we can be dishonest, we can lie, manipulate, maybe cheat, use other people or things that belong to other people, steal, coerce. You know, some kids get caught in stealing things from stores, putting guilt on another person or having guilt put on us, being evasive, being revengeful. So we become an unethical betrayer. To some greater or lesser degree, we all make mistakes. Or on the other side, the other unhealthy role is the righteous betrayer, which is the judging saint, which means I do the right thing. I'm goody-goody. I'm righteous. I'm perfectionistic. I'm critical of others, and I judge others if they didn't do it right, which is betraying your kindness and trust that each of us has our own journey and our own hardships. And it's not for us to judge. It's for us to be understanding. So I'm interested what you think about that. Now I want to show you, remember about the 7 lifetime dilemmas, and we're talking about the top one there. Well, let's just look at what happens when you've been betrayed. Hurts and ordeals without healing. So if you've been betrayed by the unethical betrayer and were cheated by someone who was corrupt, or if you were betrayed by a righteous betrayer who was a judging saint, or if you caught yourself doing this yourself, well then what happens? That's when I talk about how we act out. So this is then taking this into the adult world where we're concerned to help people. Because we see people doing things where we sabotage ourselves in certain ways. We use substances and behaviors to protect ourselves and to act out. So this is what I call OuchRage. So if we don't get enough of what's healthy, then we're hurt. And if we don't grieve and heal that, and if we're kids, we don't know how to grieve and heal. And truth to tell, how many people in our times grieve in public or in private? Do we know how to be sad and grieve and walk through the things that hurt us? Now the big things, the huge ordeals, we can't avoid the grief because it's so devastating. But when we're hurt, it's natural to grieve and heal. When we don't allow ourselves to grieve, and there are very few examples that I know of on the planet Earth where people freely grieve, comfort each other, walk through the healing of the ordeal, the hardship, the wound. and then move past it. So if we don't heal, then we're carrying the pain and the hurt, and we end up acting it out. Now, that could be something that needed to be healed, but sometimes if it's a trauma, then grieving isn't enough. And we do need to be connected, let me show you this, with people to help us come back to ourselves. So with honesty, character, virtue, and integrity, we get betrayed, we're hurt, we experience an ordeal or ordeals where we've been criticized, put on a pedestal, alienated, judged, insulted, treated with dishonesty or by an authoritarian punisher, or too permissive, indifferent. Anyway, bribed and punished. Bribed is illegal in this country, but that's, the carrot and the stick, right? And punished, which is abuse, and that's also illegal in this country. And then our response, if we can't heal and adjust to that, our response is mutiny, which means, since you've betrayed me, I can't trust you, and now I'm against you. So there are lots of ways where we consciously or unconsciously mutiny against our parents or the authorities or the generation that was in charge of us. So when we see our young ones and we wonder, why do they behave this way? How come they can't just do the right thing or the good thing? Well, in my opinion, you can trust that what they are doing is a sign that something happened to them and that it was never resolved properly. So they may be in this area of where the protector acts out with I call it OuchRage coping, which is self-stimulate or self-numb, somehow or another a coping mechanism. So they may be amoral. Since I was treated with immorality, if I was betrayed, then I'll do it back to you. If I was disrespected, I'll disrespect you. My resentment, because I've been hurt and nobody took care of me, then I will rebel and I will go against you. No matter what it is that you offer me, even though I want to like it, even though I want to be on your team or on your side, I'm going to rebel because I'm carrying a wound that is still bleeding, so to speak, figuratively. I may drop out. And as I said last week, that's one of my favorite clients is a high school or a college dropout. There are always very understandable reasons. And so if we listen, if we find out, if we can get enough trust for that child or that young person to seek along with us, there are logical reasons why. We're not born that way to be against. We're born to bond and to love each other. So if we were lied to and betrayed that way, well, then we will lie ourselves. If people have this us and them attitude where it's like us against them, which means we're not all one, we're not all connected. We are against somebody or something. And if we foster that by our being here and then making them our enemy, then our child will adopt that kind of attitude too. Oh my goodness, you can see some of that's just heart-wrenching with bullying. Conspiracy theorists, they're cynical about lots of things. Militant fundamentalists, where it's got to be my way, the right way, the only way, and otherwise I'm going to judge and criticize and make wrong. Prejudiced, which means I'm not going to have honor and integrity about humanity. There are only certain people whom I will not judge. Cults have certain structures that require people to be a certain way, where obviously don't trust yourself, trust us, and we're the only way that you can trust. True believers, which is oftentimes someone who's been cheated, and they find a place where it looks like they're safe and the people are trustworthy and do the right thing. And if we don't have age and wisdom, we might not see through the narrow strictures. Fight for an opposite cause of the person who betrayed them. So if they were betrayed by a person who was devoted to maybe working for a hospital, that something happened that was not right, then a person would want to work for the cause against the drug companies or something or other. That was an example off the top of my head. A commune which says, I'm going off the grid. I don't trust my culture, my people, how they live, and I am leaving. I'm going back to nature. And of course, nature is the ultimate good. But that says, this person or these people have been too harmed to want to stay with us. Only one right way to be. Fundamentalists, various levels of that kind of treatment, which is from the judgmental view, that people naturally mutiny against. They want to stand against what has betrayed them. So if you have any questions, I hope you're following this, and I'm wondering if it's interesting to you. Because that's the surprise I wanted you to consider, that the righteous judgment is just as much a betrayal as the dishonest cheater. The righteous judges usually don't end up in jail, though. Okay. So I wanted, as usual, to give you a method or a tool. And this is one of the things that I am very faithful to. I trust deeply, and I used it for years. I still use it in a certain way, and it's the cultivation of virtue. So this is a simpler, focused version of listening to ourselves, feeding ourselves the healthy mind food of what it is to be a person of honor and integrity. So one of the things I remind people of, and my clients, we take it for granted that our young ones have the view, the language, the kind of hangers in the brain that we do, because they have conversations with us that are very intelligent. But there is no end to learning. And one of the things that I'm very devoted to is talking about the things that may not be put on the table as a matter of course. And especially if I'm in a position of mentoring or teaching or some way counseling, I want to give the best way of thinking about it. We have a sense of concepts, but until we define it, until we name things, until we describe ideas and situations, we may not necessarily have that tool to use in our knowledge base. And so that was one of the things that we talked about last week, is our intelligences. And this is about spiritual intelligence. So I typically in my office use the 52 virtues from the Virtues Project, the Family Virtues Guide. But the spiritual practice that I teach is just the 12 Great Virtue Scrolls. And so these are the basic virtues that pretty much cover everything, because folded within each of these 12 are the other kinds of virtues. Charity, courage, devotion, discernment, which is wisdom, efficiency, forbearance, humility, kindliness, patience, precision, sincerity, tolerance. So one of the most common ones, of course, is patience. And we'll talk about patience, and people say, well, I'm not very patient. And my view is, well, that's something that we can learn. It's something that we can practice. But what it really is it? What does that look like? What does it involve? So this is free for you to download on my website. So this is 20 pages of the instructions of how to practice the virtue with a daily retrospection and a log, and then each one of the scrolls is here. So I thought I'd just introduce you to charity. Charity is giving to others with love. I belong to the family of humanity. I accept people just as they are, which means I'm going to trust somebody to be themselves, unless it's my job to teach or help change them. So let me just show you this in case you want to download it and print it for yourself, to use yourself or with your kids. This is the long form. If you really want to dive into it, like when I teach it at for a group, for each day to date it, the news for today and how I did or how I didn't live with the virtue, which would be charity we're looking at, insights I have about myself and life today through the lens of charity, insights about my virtue practice today, when I was charitable, when I could have been charitable, when I wasn't charitable, and then ideas for self-refinement tomorrow and or in the future. So the simple, direct way of practicing each of the virtues. So if we look at, here's charity, Monday, Tuesday through Sunday. So there's a little block there to check plus or minus. And the retrospection is the spiritual work, which is thinking backwards at the end of your day, thinking backwards through your day and saying, was I charitable? Well, yeah, I was. I give myself a plus. Was I charitable? Well, I didn't think about it. Was I charitable? Well, I really wasn't. So I give myself a minus. Not with judgment. With, like the eye of an experimenting scientist. Let me just take the data, because I want to figure this out and see how I can become more virtuous. So if we look at the charity scroll, I am a part of the world community. This particular virtue, charity, is one of the ones that keeps us from going into the mode of betrayal or betrayer. Because it says, I am a part of the world community. All people are linked together. When any of us grow, we are all uplifted. When any of us are disrespected, we all share the limitation. I am thus connected with everyone I meet, and they are part of me. I understand that because of this link, any action I take returns to me. So whatever I do to another, I ultimately do to myself. I express charity and love for everyone in my life. I am happy to be alive. I am grateful that I share my life with many special people. I maintain composure in difficult situations. I am at ease, courteous, and considerate with others. So that really sounds virtuous, doesn't it? And sometimes you can say, well, that's pretty idealistic, but the real world isn't quite like that. And so then how do we live it in a world that isn't like that, where we bump up against people who don't think that way? And therefore, how do we protect ourselves and how do we protect them? And that's one of those kind of artful, graceful dances of virtue, where we maintain the virtue as best as we can and dance, do the graceful dance with what we encounter, which may be honor and integrity, and it may be betrayal without judgment, unless it's our job to change something. And of course, when it's our little ones, it is our job to change something, but we don't do it with judgment. We do it with a twinkle in the eye and with a creative story, character, or lesson to teach the way of goodness, to teach the way of honor and integrity, and not to betray our child's trust, and not to betray our trust in ourselves. Thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, know yourself, treasure life, and love others. Thank you.